My primary mode of transportation from about 12 to 20 was hitchhiking. I hitchhiked everywhere. It was my main way of getting anywhere. And there's a lot of people in the rooms that talk about this. In reflection, I was really graced. I never got in the wrong car. I never had danger that way. I put myself in tremendous danger. We put ourselves in some pretty sordid situations. And I was in many of those, many of those over the years. But the grace of God's a beautiful thing. At 20, living in Sacramento, I got picked up hitchhiking by somebody in Narcotics Anonymous who was a year clean. The attraction rather than promotion kicked in, and he told me about, motorcycle rides and raft trips and camping trips and these dances that people had they were clean and sober. And my first thought was, I really need to be around some people who don't drink and use drugs. But I didn't think at all about the idea of what it meant to go to a meeting.
Well, hello, friends of Bill W. and other friends. You have landed on Sober Speak. My name is John M. I am an alcoholic, and we are glad you're all here, especially newcomers. Newcomers, that is, both to recovery as a whole and newcomers to this podcast. Sober Speak is a podcast about recovery centered around the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. My job here on Sober Speak is simple. My job is to provide a platform to the amazing stories of recovery all around us. Consider Sober Speak, if you will, your meeting between meetings. Please remember, we do not speak for AA or any 12-step community. We represent only ourselves. We are here to share our experience, strength, and hope with those who wish to come along for the ride. Take what you want and leave the rest at the curb for the trash man to pick up. Prepare to be hypnotized. Greetings from Studio AA, deep in the heart of Texas. That was the voice of Paula Robbins that you heard at the beginning of this here episode, on episode number 419, and you are going to hear so much more from Paula in just a moment. But first things first, this episode is made possible by Susan, Theo, Anonymous, Audrey, and Mary Lynn. And so you ask yourself, if you're a first-time listener, what exactly did Susan, Theo, Anonymous, Audrey, and Mary Lynn do to deserve such a mention on the podcast? Well, they went by our humble little website, www.soberspeak.com. They clicked on the little yellow donation tab and they made a contribution. So thank you so much, Susan, Theo, Anonymous, Audrey, and Mary Lynn. This here episode is coming right out to you, and as always, we're going to let all the other folks listen in, but this episode is made possible by you guys, and we really appreciate it. And I've said this many times before, but I know you have many other things you could be doing with your time, and I am just so thankful that you take time out of your schedule to come in here and listen to my silly little podcast. It means the world to me, and all the direct messages and all the emails and all the communication that I get. It's a huge part of my existence. It's a huge part of my life, and I really, really appreciate you guys. So, we're going to get right on into Miss Paula Robbins, part one today of part one of a two-part interview. And this one's called Hitchhiking into Recovery. Paula is from Centennial, Colorado. She is a metaphysical hypnotherapist, a soul coach, an author, and much, much more. And she is also a member of Les Alcoholics Anonymous and has been since, oh gosh, we talk about it, I think it's 1986, I believe. So for quite some time. And I want you to know when you're hearing this, I'm going to talk about it right at the beginning of this episode. But so Paula was kind enough to do a session, I guess is what you call it, with me right before we got on this episode, where she kind of took me into a trance. I was just curious as what it was going to be like with her being a metaphysical hypnotherapist. I talk about that experience, and you're going to hear me chat about that. But the main thing is not me, but we talk about Paula's life as a working in a cafe diner, her corporate career. I am having a little problem enunciating today. You know, you can't do this many episodes, though, and not have a problem enunciating at some point. Anyway, her introduction to hypnotherapy, metaphysics, the word synchronicity, which I love, her hitchhiking adventures, which led her to Narcotics Anonymous on the front end, and so much more. I know you're going to enjoy Paula, and we talk about several different ways to get in touch with Paula in this episode, and I'm going to put links to all of that in the show notes. But if you can't remember any of that, just go ahead and email me at john@soberspeak.com, and I will just get you in touch with Paula. Okay? Enjoy, and we will have plenty listener feedback at the end of this episode. Enjoy. Okay, everybody. So we are back again, and my energy's a little low on this recording, and I'll explain why in just a moment. But we're back with Paula R. again. She's been on the podcast in the past. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But Paula, first things first, why don't you please go ahead, introduce yourself, give your sobriety date if you wish, and tell people where you live in this great land of ours.
Well, thank you so much, first of all, for having me, John, again. You're such a dear friend, and I appreciate you so much. My name is Paula R., Paula Robbins. I got sober February 6th, 1988. Still very grateful for this way of life, still very active in my path of recovery here in Centennial, Colorado.
Centennial. So where's Centennial? Is that outside of Denver somewhere?
It is. It's kind of a southwest suburb.
Gotcha. Okay, so I want to explain to people real quickly why my energy's a little low. And I wanted to get on here on purpose while it was a little low and while I was kind of considering this and kind of processing this. But Paula well, I'll let you explain your position, what your credentials are, and exactly what you do. But then I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about that session we just went through, and I have some questions about it. Okay, so tell people what you do for a living, and I know you also have a book coming out and all that sort of stuff, and I know you have a practice. We'll get to all that, but just kind of tell people in general what you do for a living.
So I am a metaphysical hypnotherapist. I do a lot of deep healing work for people to release trauma, to explore their regression or progression into their cellular memory or their soul history, progression into their future lives and kind of checking it out. I am a soul coach. I work with people spiritually and do a lot of talk sessions as well. And I am now, gratefully, very able to say I am an author.
Yeah, that's great. And the name of that book coming out is Hitchhiking into Recovery. Is that right?
That is correct. Yes.
All right. We're going to get deep into that. But okay. So we just, so Paula reached out earlier this week and asked me if she could use like some snippets or something, audio snippets from our previous episode that we did. By the way, that episode, do you know, it's episode number 156, and it's called The Gift of Desperation, for those of you who want to go back and listen to that. But And I said, hey, yeah, that'd be great. Why don't we like do like a real quick session beforehand? Cause I've done this before with somebody who does Reiki, right? Her name's Megan. She did a great job. She came in and did it. And then we kind of talked about what she does and how she wraps that around recovery and such. So, policy, yeah, that'd be great. And so we just got off a session. It was an hour, but I tell you what, the time flew by. When you said, hey, it's time to kind of come back into consciousness, or however you phrase that, I was like, oh, wow, there's no way that I said that was like 30 minutes or so at the most, right? But the time flies. So I want to tell people what that was about and what the experience is like, just so, yeah. Okay, first of all, when I heard hypnotherapist, I thought I was going to be walking around like a chicken, right? But obviously there's ways to do hypnotherapy, but explain to me. Okay, well, actually, okay, I'm sorry, I'm kind of botching this, but when we started recording, you asked me if there was anything that, kind of I wanted to work on, or there had been any challenges or anything like that. And I brought up a combination of my mom and growing up with her and what that was like, and kind of, I guess, trauma that you have in that arena. And then also personal finance and how not how I handle personal finance, but how I think about personal finance and the, scarcity and all that sort of stuff. So I'll set it up like that. And then I want you to take it from there. What was the intention? What were we trying to get done there?
So the work that we did, this particular modality, was cellular release therapy. And before I explain it in more detail, I want to say that there are so many types of hypnotherapy. There are several different types of metaphysical alternative healing. There is not a one size fits all. There are not not every hypnotherapist is doing the same thing. So the work that you and I did today was cellular release therapy. And to explain that as simply as possible is to say that the cells in your body are like a vault. Everything you've ever been throughout the entire history of your soul, or even in the DNA that goes back generations, is in your present day cellular memory. And with cellular release therapy, what we are doing through hypnosis is asking the subconscious permission to release and clear experiences that are difficult, that are holding you back, that are a life theme. And in this case, there was kind of an intertwining between financially insecure and kind of your conditioning. Mom grew up poor. Mom had a lot of difficulties relating to financial insecurity, not to mention there was just some scarcity in general relative to, I really kind of had some lack in my relationship with my mom, right? So, we're speaking pretty openly. We talked about this before we hit record, that we were going to talk really
Yep,
openly about what that session included. So John gave permission for me to share
I
all of
did.
that.
Yep.
Super careful about confidentiality, but we wanted to bring this to you guys to understand a little bit more about the nature of that. And when you ask the subconscious permission, that's a completely different level of letting go than someone saying, hey, John, just let it go. Hey, John, just let it go. Or in your own mind, I really need to get over this. How come I can't shake this? It's very, very different when you have a cellular release therapist asking permission of the subconscious to let it go. And that's what predominantly we focused on.
And let me say this too. I noticed that I was, I don't know, I was kind of in a trance, for lack of a better word. And I was definitely, my body was kind of shaking and responding to the words you were saying. And I'm assuming that I'm going to know that if this worked is by if I have less stress, if you will, around personal finance as we move forward, right?
Right, right. And here's I want to give myself a bit of a caveat too, because a lot of the time, one topic like financially insecure or difficulty with your mom is also related to numerous other topics: unworthy, undeserving, not good enough. And sometimes you can't just clear around like one thing and it's going to be changing everything. And sometimes it's absolute transformation. So I will guess, and I'd bet a little money that you will notice that there is less stress around financial security, that there is less chatter in your mind, in your body, in your energy system, in your nervous system about this worry that you've had around money. I'm guessing it will have lessened for sure. Are there other components of this that could probably really, truly, fully clear it? Sure. Sure, but what we did today was pretty impactful.
And so when you said you at the end of it, you said, "Hey, that was pretty impactful. You did much better than I thought you would do." What do you mean by that? I mean, how can you tell?
You know, I've been doing this since 2007. So I've been a hypnotherapist for a long, long time. And I'm also very highly intuitive. So I notice the energy of people during a session. Metaphysical work truly includes a pretty high level of intuition. You have to follow your instinct, you have to follow the energy, you have to follow what's going on between you and the client you're working with. So I watch energy, and a lot of energy moved away from you with every time that you said yes, that you granted permission to allow the clearing. So there was a lot of energy moving, a lot of shift for you. And the word that you used earlier, trance, that's the accurate word. You were in trance, and that's the goal. And here's something that's kind of cool. I like to talk about this because people think that trance feels like you're altered in some way. And I'm guessing you just felt super relaxed,
Mhm.
but not altered, right?
Yes, that's correct.
So where your subconscious mind's always present. It never leaves. It's always focused. It's always functioning. The consciousness slows down. So we ask you to relax. We use language to help you relax. The more you relax, the more the subconscious kind of tunes in. And that's where, like, I'm relaxed, but I'm really present. I'm really relaxed, but I'm really tuned in. That's trance.
There was something you were doing. You said, okay, I forget the word. You said with the fingers, you either lift one or the other finger. What's the word for that? Where you're not talking, but you use your finger?
It's called ideomotor signals.
Okay.
So lifting the index finger for yes, lifting the pinky finger for no is ideomotor signals.
All right. So you asked me to do that before we started. Uh, and what I noticed a couple of times is that my finger, without me thinking about it, through the subconscious, I guess, was lifting and saying yes, or started to say no, or something like that. Is that unusual?
No. Mm-mm. The ideomotor signals I personally feel are the easiest way to communicate with the subconscious. I think any one of us knows our instinct. It's like, you flip the blinker up when you want to turn right. We move into our instinct, and our instinct is typically pretty sharp. I mean, nobody is without it. So just lifting a finger is really, really simple, and people are able to connect with their subconscious in that modality. Like I said, there are other ways of doing hypnosis. There are other techniques. There's other modalities. This is just my preferred modality because the consciousness doesn't engage as much. It's just instinct. Just lift a finger. We don't want to ask you to visualize or talk or engage consciously. Just lift a finger. And people stay in deeper trance that way.
Right. Oh, it was so interesting. I got to tell you, there was one point because I forget exactly how you phrase it, but you say there was something around my mom, and you said basically, can you take all of this and get rid of it? What's the general phrase you use there? What is that?
It's the request. It's a request for permission. Can you now release and clear this?
Yeah. And with my mom, I had to I couldn't automatically just raise my finger, right? I had to sit there, I had to breathe it in a few times, I had to process it, and, eventually, it didn't go I have no idea how long it took, right? To me, it seemed like 10 minutes, it was probably like 30 seconds or something, but, it was just very interesting, and so, anyway, well, I'll have to keep the listeners posted here on my struggles with personal finance and my relationship with my mom. But I just wanted I know people that come into listen to this podcast usually are not coming here for like some sort of hypnotherapy sort of training or discussion. But to me, it's very interesting because it definitely does relate to recovery. So let's talk about your recovery. You said you got sober in 1988, huh?
Yes.
That's been a while, Paula. And the
Yeah.
other thing I did want to ask you, during that time, did you start out being a hypnotherapist in 1988, or was that some sort of evolution to where you finally came to that?
Oh, it's been one heck of an evolution, John. In 1988, I was a cafe diner waitress. Um, and then I did step into an office job. I worked in an office as a receptionist, and then I got a job in 1992 in the staffing and recruiting industry. So I was in corporate America for 16 years. I had a very progressive career, placing people in temporary positions and permanent positions. And then my career advanced and I was promoted into sales and management and training. So I had a very progressive career in the staffing and recruiting industry until 2008 when I officially became a hypnotherapist. Back up a tiny bit here, 2006, I was approaching 40 years old. I was approaching 20 years sober, and I was over it. I'd been in corporate America for a long time. I was burning out. I was learning a lot about the back end, and I spiritually was just struggling. This is not where I want to be professionally. So I started praying, God, where do you want me to be? I need to have a sustainable career that will help me take care of my daughters. I had my daughters were still teenagers at home. I was a single mom. And I also wanted to be of higher service in the world. Like, I need to help people. What do you want me to do? I went to go see a hypnotherapist for weight loss in 2006. And before I was ever in any state of hypnosis, my initial consultation with this woman, I knew right away this is what my next career move was going to be. It was one of those kind of white light moments.
Wow.
Wow, I found it. And I was incredibly grateful. And then there was just this incredible snowball effect of free office space and a really cool consulting gig to transition me from my cushy security of corporate America to being an entrepreneur with no health insurance. I mean, it was just such an incredible transition. But there was no question in my mind how divinely supported I was. I mean, there's probably 5 or 6 things I could share here about the synchronicities that came together because I was supposed to do this. And so I became a hypnotherapist in 2008. And the correlation to my recovery, in the big book, they talk about being rocketed into the 4th dimension. I can say without much hesitation that my fascination with spirituality, my curiosity about spirituality, especially coming from a very strong agnostic stance, was really strong. I wanted to learn more. I wanted to grow more. And I've been rocketed into like the 7th, 8th, 30th dimension. Metaphysics is a trip. And it's a very cool spiritual path. So yeah, it very much correlates. But it all started because I got into recovery in 1988, and more specifically, because I got picked up hitchhiking by the right guy.
Okay, so that's going to be hitchhiking into recovery, right? Okay, so
Yes.
um, let's. I want to talk about a couple of other things first. So, I don't know if you're aware of this, but where we met, you remember how we met?
I do.
That
I do.
meeting, and so
Yeah,
you were down here visiting. I think one of your daughters. Is that right?
correct. Yeah, my daughter lives just around the corner from you. Yeah.
Okay. And so you came to what is called the Shivering Denizens group, and it was a Saturday at noon.
Mhm.
And there was probably, I don't know, 8, 10 people in there at the most. And, you were visiting. And I was and when you shared, right, I was very intrigued by what you had shared. And I hadn't been too long doing the podcast. And I said, "Hey, would you be willing to, be on the podcast? But I want to let you know." And you said yes. And so we got that first episode recorded. But I want to let you know that that meeting is no longer there. We actually replaced it with another meeting, kind of, sort of, right? That one went away, but there's even a bigger one now. But it's just interesting is that how God works, the universe, whatever you want to call it, right? Bringing people together. And now
Mhm.
we're here all these years later doing a podcast for you because, as you have become an author, which I am absolutely tickled pink to be doing this with. So,
Well, thank you again. No, I love the flukes and the synchronicities that come together, and I trust them. I mean, I rely upon them now.
synchronicities. I love that. And, it's interesting because, I told you about, having struggles with personal finance. And recently I've been using that as a kind of a prompt whenever I get that to kind of lean into prayer and lean into God and ask him, what would you have me? And for whatever reason, sometimes you don't even know that you're not doing it. Right. It wasn't that I was consciously not praying about it, but for whatever reason, just recently kind of came to me, okay, this is something I need to pray about. This is something you need to lean into. And then we had a conversation this week and we just did a whole session on it. And so I absolutely love it. Okay. All right. So you were so talk to me a little about your journey before getting to Alcoholics Anonymous, if you can, and how that all, whatever kind of highlights that you want to share there.
So I grew up in Colorado. My family are all restaurant and bar people. So my mother was a bartender. My aunts and uncles, all on my maternal side, were restaurant people, cooks, chefs, servers, bartenders, restaurant managers, and owners. So I grew up in the restaurant and bar business. And alcohol was no stranger in my childhood. I jokingly say that I grew up in an above average dysfunctional family. It was crazy and it was not great. There was certainly some laughter and some love, and I have incredibly fond memories with my grandmother, especially, but the rest of the family was kind of crazy. And there was neglect, and there was abuse, and there was alcoholism. And I started drinking at 12. The first time that I drank with intention to get drunk. I'd had alcohol before as a kid, brandy for a toothache or whatever. But when I drank to get drunk the first time, I was 12. It was intentional. It's what I wanted to do. And the first time I got drunk, I blacked out. And literally almost every single time I got drunk after that, I blacked out. And by the time I was 14, I was kind of suspicious as to why can I never remember? Why does that happen so readily? By the time I was 16, I was pretty clear. I think I'm an alcoholic like the rest of them. By the time I was 18, there was no question in my mind that I was severely alcoholic. And I started wanting to change my life. I started wanting to get sober. I started wanting to handle my alcohol differently. But denial is a very deep issue. Um, I kept drinking and thinking that I'd outgrow it. I'm 18 now. I'm going to outgrow these blackouts. And I left Colorado. I went to Job Corps in Utah. I got my high school diploma because I had dropped out. There's a whole lot more backstory to the family and the dysfunction, but I dropped out of high school, left for Utah to take some vocational training, get my high school diploma through Job Corps. And during the day, like while I was on center, I had this opportunity to go to class, to learn things, to achieve a few things. And I liked that version of myself that was responsible and capable and smart. But the weekends just kept coming. And we were able to take trips into town, and go hang out and just relax and, have recreation time. And the first thing I did as soon as I got off that bus was find alcohol or drugs and get wasted. So by the time I hit 19, I was like, what is my deal? Like, I don't want to be this way anymore. By the time I turned 20, I had left Job Corps, moved to California, and moved in with a dear friend of mine from high school and her mom, and found myself wanting to start my life with my new vocational skills, and at the same time, unable to stop myself from migrating to the drinking. And my primary mode of transportation from about 12 to 20 was hitchhiking. I hitchhiked everywhere. It was my main way of getting anywhere.
Did you
And
ever experience any sort of, I mean, it's not the safest way to get around for a young
right,
woman. Did you ever experience any sort of trouble with that?
I did not. And I, again, in reflection, and there's a lot of people in the rooms that talk about this. In reflection, I was really graced. I never got in the wrong car. I never had danger that way. I put myself in tremendous danger. I was in several drunk driving vehicles. I was in several homes where there was incredible, crazy partying, fighting, guns, drugs. I mean, we put ourselves in some pretty sordid situations. And I was in many of those, many, many of those over the years. But the grace of God's a beautiful thing. And at 20, living in Sacramento, I got picked up hitchhiking by somebody in Narcotics Anonymous who was a year clean.
Wow.
And the attraction rather than promotion kicked in. And he told me about, motorcycle rides and raft trips and camping trips and these dances that people had in They Were Clean and Sober. And my first thought was, I really need to be around some people who don't drink and use drugs. But I didn't think at all about the idea of what it meant to go to a meeting. So for a few weeks, he and I stayed in touch. He asked me, hey, do you want to go to one of those meetings? And I'm like, hey, is anybody going motorcycle riding? Or is there a camp out? Or can I go on a raft trip? Until eventually I hit a pretty tough bottom of waking up in that incomprehensible demoralization. And I reached out and said, yes, I do want to go to one of those meetings. So gratefully, he took me to my first meeting, and I have stayed since February 6th, 1988. Well, my first meeting was February 1st of 1988. That next 5 days, I smoked as much pot as humanly possible because I didn't realize that didn't count at the time, or that it did count at the time. So, yeah, it was February 6th, 1988. I went on a motorcycle ride with several people in the program, and we were completely clean and sober. And it was a pretty cool day. And honestly, in reflection, there's no question in my mind I fell in love with recovery that day.
Wow. And do you still keep in contact with any of those people? Have they, I don't know, sometimes
What
they
a
stick
cool,
around, sometimes they don't.
such a cool answer. So, yes and no. I mean, it was a pretty big group, so I didn't stay in touch with all of them. There's a couple of them that I've stayed in tune with over Facebook, but the guy who picked me up hitchhiking, first of all, let me just say his name is JC, and I didn't ever correlate that name to any form of spirituality until I was about 11 years sober. So I want to put that out there too. I did lose touch with him in like 1989. And I don't know really what happened to him. I got married and had kids and got divorced and moved to Colorado. And just literally a few weeks ago, after the book was in its final draft, I was telling a friend of mine how much I wished I could be in touch with JC. And I've known her since the beginning of my recovery. She's one of those people in the beginning. And she's like, JC Mooney? I'm like, yeah. I couldn't even remember his last name. And she goes, well, he lives in Tucson. So I reached out to him on Facebook and we've reconnected. And I can't tell you the elation and the gratitude that I have for not only one, finishing the book, but being able to share this story with someone who was so instrumental in the biggest transformation of my life. So I'm really grateful that he and I are back in touch, and he'll be a part of the book launch. He gets the first signed copy. I mean, and he knows that his name is out there. He's more than happy to. He's still in recovery too. He's 38.
Very cool.
Yeah, he got sober in 1987. Clean and sober, 87.
That is cool. Okay, Paula. So here's the thing. I want to talk about your book in detail. I have other questions for you. And will you come back at another time and get that recorded so we can talk about it more in depth?
Absolutely, yes.
All right, Paul. So here's what I do. I'll always at the end of these, I know it's been a long time since you've been on. I don't even know if I was doing this when you came on the first time, but I always read from page 164 out of the big book to close us up. It says, abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us, like me and Paula, as you trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. Once again, Paula, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, John.
Thank you once again, Paula. And as I mentioned on the beginning of this episode, we will put the links to all the ways that you can get in touch with Paula and her book in the show notes. And once again, if you can't remember any of that, just write me, John, JOHN at soberspeak.com, and I will get you in touch with Paula immediately. And as a reminder, also, we will be coming back next week. You're not going to want to miss next week. We dive into Paula's story, so much more. We're not talking about me and, what happened to me during this hypnotherapy thing. It's just all Paula, and you're absolutely going to enjoy it so much. All right. Now, on to a little bit of listener feedback. Linda writes in and she says, hi, John. I've been sober since May 20th of 2001, and I now live in Belen, New Mexico. Belen, Belen, New Mexico. I got sober in a suburb of Chicago. Why did I say Chicago? I got sober in a suburb of Seattle, and have been to many meetings all over the place. I found Sober Speak on Apple Podcasts, and I really do enjoy the speakers you have on. Lately, the ones with Dave F. were absolutely great. Thank you so much for your service, Linda. Blessings, Linda. And so thank you so much for writing in, Linda. And if y'all are out there and you're listening to me on, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you happen to be listening, and you can pause your device and, give us a little rating or comments, if you will. We'd absolutely love it. And if you want to go the extra mile, you could share this podcast with another friend or family member. It may be just what they need today. Thanks for writing in, Linda. Theo writes in. Oh, my buddy Theo. He says, hey, buddy, I loved Yolanda's story. Yolanda's one of our previous episodes he's talking about there. And then he says, hey, do you know Chris R? I may have gotten his last name misspelled, but and he spells out the entire name. I'm just not saying it here. But your pod needs him in the collection. Put your feelers out there and see what you hear about him on your end. I bet you will like what you get. So Just so everybody knows, and I've been asked this several times, Chris R., that lives here in Texas, I have talked to him a couple of times and we've texted back and forth. And our schedules have not worked and I've not been able to get him on the podcast. But if you're out there and you know Chris, and you could give him a little nudge, little encouragement, that would be absolutely fantastic. But anyway, and then Theo goes on. Anyway, my mom and I were listening to the podcast before Yolanda, and I had to leave the room when you read my message. Bro, I came back in tears and the best hug of her visit. Very cool. You have another listener, as I put it, on her phone. Her name is Sabrina S. Well, hello, Sabrina S. Glad you're listening out there. And I'm praying that she gets herself in the boat. She is still on the fence, but I'm shaking the fence as hard as I can in our direction. Thank you so much, John. You already know that I'm hooked, but you have a loyal listener in me, and prayers for you and your family every day from Austin, Texas. And I hope someday to meet you in the rooms. Likewise, Theo. Man, I experience miracles every day. And yes, my mom visited. We listened to your pod. I took a picture of us and had it printed on a canvas for her for next time she comes. Sunlight of the Spirit, baby. He sent me a picture of him and his mom and the sunlight in the background. And it's just a beautiful picture of him and his mom. And thank you so much for sending that over, Theo. I appreciate it. And then he ends it up with, we are in the age of miracles and we are performing great work. I know God smiles when he sees his soldiers putting his gifts to good use. Theo, November 28th, 2023, sober update. Well, Theo, you're right. He does smile when he sees his soldiers putting his gifts to good use. And I appreciate you writing in, and give your mom, Sabrina, was it Sabrina? Yeah, Sabrina, my best. And I'm so glad she's listening in as well. God bless you. Jeffrey writes in, and Jeffrey says, thanks for what you do on Sober Speak. I am Jeffrey H. from Southern Mississippi. Mississippi. My sobriety date is 12/23/18. I have been in and out of AA since I was first introduced to the program in 2002 by my 1SG. I'm not sure what that means, which also became my first sponsor. From 2002 to 2018, the longest time of sobriety was 4 years, and I did that 2 times. I found Sober Speak looking for a recovery podcast on Spotify and iTunes. Or give us a little rating there. I would appreciate it, Mr. Jeffrey. When I started to feel the 4-year itch, all of the speakers has something that resonated with me. Norm A. Seconds and Inches is one I go back and listen to multiple times. Oh, I love that tape. And I also love Reno John. Yeah, I was just texting with Reno today. We're going to get him back on again. Thank you for saying that. Anyway, he says, they break it down to a point I can get, even when my head is trying to play tricks on me. You are my meeting between meetings. I listen at work, as I'm driving, and when I am at home. Thank you again for the work you do with Sober Speak. I even listen to your openings and closings on each episode, Jeffrey. Well, thank you, Jeffrey, for listening in to the bookends, as I call it. We call them the intro and the outro. I didn't come up with that. Somebody calls it the outro when you put the ending on there. But anyway, thank you so much. God bless you, Jeffrey. All right. That is another episode number 419 in the books. Once again, tune back in next week for episode number 420 with Paula again, kind of a follow-up interview, if you will, with her. And what else do I need to tell you? Keep coming back. It works if you work it. I do this 1 week at a time. I never know if I'm going to be back or not. I hope to be back next week for Paula's sake. I do hope that I am next week so we can get this recording released. And then may God bless you and keep you until then. Sober on.